What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to episode 9 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. If you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. We're just going to jump right into it because we've got about a 27-minute video, and we need to get moving on this one. So we're going to be fixing up our neck just a little bit. Because what we ended up with episode 8 looks pretty good, but we need to do a little bit of work to the backbone. For right now, we're just going to add a layer to our outline here. Not going to be changing the shape, we're just going to be adding a row basically on each side of it, and then we're going to mosey on over to the backbone. And really what we're going to be changing about is that it doesn't look bad, but it's too thin. So we're going to have to thicken it up just a little bit because it's not going to work. Because when I had built this originally, right where we were in episode 8, I'd gone back and I was looking at pictures of the 3D model, and or I was looking at the 3D model, and as I was zooming around, I was just looking at the neck, and I was like, man, like at the base of it, it's just way too thin. And by making the base of it thicker, we're ultimately going to have to go and make the rest of the neck thicker. It is what it is, you know. Some times we just got to make changes as we go, and there's going to be a couple of times when we're doing this, we're going to have to backtrack ever so slightly just to make some adjustments. Not so much with the whole build, but pretty much with the neck and then the deflector dish. Really the only times that we had to do that. I believe when I was doing the engines, I think I increased the length of them twice to get it in the correct proportions with the ship. Yeah, you can see like at the very bottom, it's way too thin. And that's not something you're really going to see on the Enterprise D. So we're going to have to add a few more layers. And yeah, because a three wide on the bottom, that's not enough. It really isn't. So we're going to start off with 2 on each side extra on the back. And then we're just going to work our way up. Kind of hard to mess this up. So we're literally just going to be going by the same slant now. So now we're going to have to add 3 on this side to keep going with that outward slant. Or actually for the first 3 rows, they'll be the same length. Because I want to make sure to match that up with what we had previously. Because remember, the last 3 rows, they were the same width on each side. So now in the 4th row, that's going to be 1 wider. And then it's just going to transition on as we go out. I want to mess around here. Maybe we can even start having it transition from the first one. That looks pretty good. It's not too thick either. That gives us making it this thickness, that gives us a little bit of wiggle room to where if we decide to have any type of structures in the dead center, or not the dead center, but the bottom of the neck right here, then we'll have enough room to play around with. By the time this is done, the neck is actually going to end up being massive, and we have enough room to do everything that we're going to want to do on the interior. I don't really, even now, because I'm currently figuring out the interior on the Enterprise D, I haven't really hit any walls where I'm thinking like, man, like I really don't have enough room to do what I want to do. I don't think that's going to be an issue at all with this build. I think I made it a decent enough size to where everything that I want to be able to do on this interior, we're going to be able to accomplish. Which is pretty cool because I've never actually been faced with that scenario before in building. I've always been restricted in one way or another, at least at one point in the build. So it'll be really cool for having a change in that and really being able to do everything that I want to do, because there's a lot of cool rooms and stuff that they conceptualized for the Enterprise D, and a lot of it we never got to see on the show because they just didn't have the budget for it. And I think there was even some stuff that they developed for Star Trek Online that for whatever reason they just never put into the ships on the interior. But there's some cool stuff that we have coming up on the interior is what my point is. But anyway, getting back in a little bit what we got going on, I'm just kind of looking at the angle of what we currently have. And you see, it's not going to really be that much thicker than what it is now. So I think that's going to work out pretty well. At this point, it's just a matter of stretching out the sides as we go up. And some of you might be thinking like, well, you know, maybe I don't want to retread, but I'm telling you, like, it really does. It needs this change because you don't want to be too restricted on your interior. And even right now, as I'm working on the interior, I'm still trying to figure some things out. Like, I have my base layout for my corridors. Well, I have most of it done. I'm only just now starting working on my corridors for the lower hull. But I've already completed them on the saucer section. I've already completed the turbo lift going down through the neck, which was actually kind of a challenge because the way the deflector dish and the front end of the lower hull is angled, I had to mess around with that just to get it to come out right. But as far as the neck goes, we're going to have a ton of room here to do whatever we need to do. But it's just a matter of getting this to look right. And we're not really changing up anything of what we already have. We're just taking the pre-existing design that we laid out in episode 8, and we're just making it just a little bit thicker. You can see I'm kind of jumping up a couple of rows, but as long as you're keeping your transition where it's supposed to be, if you start from the bottom and then go up and out on each side by one, you're not going to be able to make any mistakes. Kind of hard to mess that up. So just take your time, start from the bottom, go row by row. You want to make sure that you mind your middle cuts as we get closer up towards the top, because that's definitely going to be a thing. I was honestly considering skipping a lot of this episode just because there is a little bit of repetition in it, but then I decided, like, you know, the neck is kind of complicated, and maybe it's just best that I just do this live, and if we have to retread, we retread. But hopefully those of you that want that extra detail and want me to go over all this stuff, you appreciate that. I think the neck, or excuse me, not the neck, when we were doing the saucer, we can get away with that because what we were doing and adding the layers, it was pretty self-explanatory, but this is getting to the realm of it becoming slightly more complicated. So far, looking pretty good. One thing I'm curious of, and I haven't had anybody comment just yet, but what are some of the rooms that you want to see me build when we're doing this interior? Because I've got a bunch of cool ideas on things that I want to do, but there's 7 seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation on top of one feature film featuring the Enterprise D. So there's a ton of content that we can potentially do with this ship, and I'm going to be pretty much building out as much of it as I can. But as always, when I do these tutorials, I try to do it based off of what everybody would like to see. So be sure to drop those comments below. Let me know what rooms you want to see me build on this interior. Would definitely love to hear from you. Now, you can see I'm kind of messing around here. I've got these blue builder lines because I'm not sure how far that's going to come out. As you can see, I'm kind of skipping sides here, but starting from the bottom and working your way up, I think that's an easier solution at this point. I'm kind of making it, the way I'm building this, harder than it needs to be. But I might ultimately end up making it thicker, is what I'm getting at too. And if that is the case and you get stuck, if we do end up doing that, we're just going to go all the way back down to the bottom, and your bottom row will be your gauge. You'll just have to know how many more rows we're going to add off the bottom. This way it'll be easier to transition that upward, because I am kind of going up a couple of rows. I don't think I was necessarily considering that when I was doing the tutorial but now I'm going back and I'm making sure that both sides match. So that is actually going to line up, except on this left side here, this is a little bit longer than the right, it looks like. So we're going to clean that up. To be honest with you, these blue blocks right here, we can swap that out with the white quartz. Perfect, so now we're just going to hop over to the left side and we're going to repeat the same process. Going by the rule, of course, if we do one thing on one side, we're doing on the other side. Covering our butts and making sure that we're keeping the build consistent. I've always found that you start jumping around and skipping and just working on one side for a while, then trying to go over to the other side. It's harder to remember exactly what you did, especially when you're working with patterns, if you want both sides to be exact. Some of you may not necessarily be worried about that. If that's the case, hey, build it the way that you think that you should. But that's something that I've always thought about when I'm building these ships. I want both sides to match perfectly. If it doesn't match and I didn't do something right, and then I got to go back because it's going to bother me until I fix it. That's just kind of like the artist in me coming out, where it has to look right on all sides. And this is the easiest process to do it. Just if you do one thing on one side, hop over to the right side, do the same thing. It seems to me like at the same time, might save myself a little bit of time too, because you're technically building both sides at once. Now once we're done extending this thing out, we're going to come back and we're going to add in our half slabs to soften the cut on each transition that we have going on the backbone here. I definitely feel it now, especially now seeing it fresh, because it's been a while since I worked on the neck, and what we had originally, it was just way too small, and it wasn't really going to work for what the amount of stuff that I'm wanting to put on the interior. You know, definitely don't want to be restricted in any way. Alright, we're in good shape. I'm going to zoom out, take a look a little bit. So far, so good. Now the reason I'm adding those blocks in that side is because I know I have another cut coming up, and I want to know when my next row needs to be, or I cut inwards. What I mean by that is that there's 4 cuts on the backbone. There's 2 on the left and then 2 on the right. These cuts right here. So you can see that I'm adding them so that this row right here matches up with there. So basically I'm making myself a marker to stop myself from possibly making a mistake. This row is where the cut's going to be, so now we're going to go in 1. I think I might have actually... And you go 1 back. Yep. Or it should say 1 forward. Yeah, see, that looks pretty good. Alright, let's go over to the left side and we're going to repeat that same process. I'm going to go over on the lip of the saucer. I'm going to add another row of gray. just because I don't want the neck to completely bleed in with the saucer. Because I may decide that I want to make a change to it, and definitely want that line to stick out so I know that where the neck begins and the saucer ends, at least for right now. That's more of a builder line at this point, and it's not so much a cosmetic. That right there is a mistake though. Let's switch over to the quartz. Alright, now we're in good shape. So at this point, it's just a repetition process, doing this over and over until we get up to the top row. And I made a mistake there, I gotta fix that. I gotta make a cut right there, take that row off. This is why you just need to pay attention to what you're doing, because if you're not, even if you're somewhat paying attention, you really have to focus on it, because you can so easily make a mistake. And when you're trying to build off your pattern and keeping that accurate, you really have to mind what you're doing, because you can see right there that I almost made a mistake. Not necessarily a huge mistake, but you're zooming out, flying around your ship, especially with the backbone the way we have it patterned, that's something that's just going to stick out like a sore thumb. So we definitely want to make sure that we're paying attention to that. So this way, when we're going over our layers, that everything matches up and it looks nice and pretty. Kind of thinking at this point, I'm going to end up having maybe one more cut. We'll see though. You can see that this is going to be a cut line right here. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to line all these blocks up with that next cut row. Alright. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want the neck to blend in with the saucer. I want it to look seamless, like it's all one piece. Even though we have that gray line there separating the two, eventually we're going to take that out. And when we do, you're not going to be able to tell the difference on where the neck ends and the saucer begins in this area. And that's exactly what I'm going for. That's exactly how it looks in the Enterprise D. And when I was just sitting here thinking about what I was going to do, that was the easiest solution for me anyway that I can think of that would blend them in together. Alright, got a couple more rows to do, and then we're going to be done, at least on increasing the width on each side, and then we're just going to have to go back and soften each row with half slabs. And surprisingly, I could have even maybe left it alone like this with the full blocks, and it honestly doesn't look bad, it really doesn't. But it's going to look better once we get the half slabs in. It's going to look a lot better, I think. Figure out those two sides though. The last row basically. But for right now we're just going to fill it in and have it come right up to the gray line, so this way it matches the cut. Could end up doing a row of 3, or even going all the way down to the next cut after that, which is what I did on the left. So now we're just going to go all the way over until we get to the cut and stop. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out what my next move's going to be. At least on those sides there, I'm not necessarily set on how I'm going to blend that in just yet. I think for right now, we're going to take a short hiatus, at least on those two top corners, the left and right side, and we're going to work on our half slabs here. You can see that I'm skipping the very last block intentionally. We're going to be doing this both for the left side and the right side. I have a couple of rows on the left side here that I have to fill in. Could even go back now and use half slabs, bring it out one more to cover up that gray line. You see, I skipped the middle on purpose because I want to know where the middle is. So that one half slab that I skipped, that's a dead center. And that's where that gray block is floating up. The reason for that is because eventually we're going to come back and we're going to have a line going down the middle here, leading down to the middle impulse engine, because on the Enterprise D it actually has 3 impulse engines, and 2 of them are attached to the saucer, and then 1 of them is attached to the lower hull, and that's so that the saucer and the lower hull can separate and both of them have power. Funny bit of information that some of you may or may not be aware of regarding the Enterprise E, that the Enterprise E was actually designed to be able to separate its saucer too. One of the reasons they never did it, or I'd like to think that they never did it, was because when they designed the ship, some of you may or may not notice, is that the Enterprise E does not have a lower hull impulse engine. So if the saucer and lower hull separated, the lower hull is basically just going to sit there. So it looks really cool by itself, and if you don't believe me on that, do a search on Google for it, and definitely makes the lower hull look kind of like a throwing dart. But it looks neat. It would have been cool to see in the movies if they did it, but there were a lot of stuff that I would have loved to have seen for the Enterprise E. That was another one they did a bunch of concept art for. So eventually when we do build that ship, it's going to be a lot of fun. But we're just cruising along here, getting the rest of our half slabs in, transitioning down, and you can see it's going to make the backbone look so much better than what we have right now, because it softens the cut as we go row to row. Level to level, I should say. Got a couple more rows to do before we get down to the bottom. And then that's going to wrap us up for today. We got about last 3 minutes left. 27 minutes really flew by there. Yeah, we're making some consistent progress on the Enterprise D. I honestly, when I was recording this, I thought that just doing the saucer section alone was going to take a long time to do, and I'm pretty happy with the fact that we've gotten this far by episode 9. We still have a long way to go, but we've got a considerable amount of work done, and there's just a massive amount of work left to do on this thing. I mean, I said it before, I don't know if I'm going to build another ship this size again, but I don't know, I might, because then the OCD is going to kick in, especially if and when I decide to do the Enterprise E, because it's about the same size as the Enterprise D, just a little bit longer, from what I remember off the top of my head. But it's definitely not going to be the next build, so I don't want anyone to get discouraged. I will at one point build the Enterprise E, but I just don't want to do all the Enterprises back to back. But what other ships would you like to see me build? Because I'm always thinking about what my next build is going to be, and I've had a few people requesting some things. I think right now, Voyager is probably my #1 request. I've had a bunch of people ask for Voyager, so I may end up doing Voyager next. I don't know. I've had a couple people ask for the Stargate. Stargazer, but not nearly as much as Voyager. So, what ships would you like to see me build? Doesn't even necessarily have to be Star Trek. It could be anything nerd related in general. And if I get enough people asking for it, I will definitely do that as my next build. But we've got a little bit of work to do before I can start thinking about that. I'm not sure how many episodes the Enterprise D is going to pan out to, but I know I've already got 200 recording sessions, and I've only just begun on the interior. Some of those recording sessions are 5 minutes, some of them are 10, some of them are 30. But I've also got a bunch of them in there that are maybe like a minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes. That are relatively short, and I just clip them together. But man, that looks pretty good. Looks kind of weird with it just sitting there by itself. But right now we're just trying to envision the shape of it and seeing how all of it's going to eventually come together. We're going to shoot out to the front and take a look at this thing. That looked pretty good. I think this is going to work out just fine. It has a little bit more of the thickness that I was looking for on each side. Now we're just going to be getting into the next headache, which is filling in the sides here and making it all work. And that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to revisiting that to see, watching myself do that again. Because I remember when I built it live, it was a task to get it done, but we'll do it. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap us up today. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. If you did enjoy this content, please help me out. Hit that like and subscribe button, helping me and supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And new subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so you always get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, you can always catch my Starship Evo builds dropping on Mondays, my Minecraft videos dropping Tuesdays through Thursdays. So don't forget to tune in next week on Tuesday for the next episode of the Enterprise D. All right, YouTube, thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. I hope everybody has a happy and safe weekend, and I'll catch you on the next episode.